Hey everyone, this is Car RayRob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And we want to welcome you to a brand new episode of A Copy of a Copy.
A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy.
That's right, everybody. It is February. It's the second week of February, which means it is time for a copy of a copy. Rob, the name's pretty self-explanatory, but you want to just remind everybody what we're going to try and do here today?
Absolutely. Ray and I watch originals and remakes and try to decide what kind of remake they are.
Yeah.
Why were they made? Was it necessary? We're going to answer all these questions right here on this show.
I really like doing this. I find this to be
Yeah.
quite fun, kind of really trying to think about what the heck the studio was thinking. And I think I'm going to like this one too. It fits the month of February. We are watching Sabrina and Sabrina.
Absolutely. I'm going to guarantee you're going to like half of it. That's for sure. No, I'm going to say right up front, I'm very biased. The original Sabrina, 1954 Sabrina, written, directed
Well, we're
by...
allowed to compare here. So.
We are allowed to compare. It is one of my favorite romantic comedies of all time, written and directed by what I think we are quickly becoming here at Car RayRob, the Billy Wilder fan club. And yeah, this is just, we loved The Apartment. I love The Apartment.
Yeah.
Ray loved The
I
Apartment.
did.
Favorite
I really
movie of
loved
last
it.
year.
Yes.
And Sabrina, I think, is going to knock your socks off as well.
And Rob, did you know there's an actor that I've seen a couple of his movies from recently? His name is Humphrey Bogart. He's in this movie.
He is in this
I'm
movie.
a Humphrey Bogart fan.
And this is actually a great Humphrey Bogart movie for a couple of reasons. One, because he kind of plays out of character again, which, it's funny because...
If you say that about every movie he's in, then
Well,
that
because
is...
that is the kind of movies we're kind of doing. We're
Yeah.
not really doing that many of his like noir movies.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of an interesting thing for you is your exposure to him really is not necessarily the typical Humphrey Bogart, that most people, know and love. It's like
Right.
sometimes we've done these like little offshoots here, like with In a Lonely Place and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Casablanca, but it's obviously
Casablanca,
not an
everybody knows
offshoot, but it's
Casablanca.
different.
That is
but
the
it's not.
pinnacle.
Yeah, but it's not the character prototype that everybody kind of thinks of him. Like
Sure.
maybe a long
Sure.
detective's jacket on or something
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, the other Sabrina exists too, right?
It
Harrison
does.
Ford.
Harrison
Greg Kinnear, when he actually had a career, like
Right.
Greg career, like was going to be short here.
That's fair. But this one also is directed by the great Sydney Pollock.
Yeah.
So I think, it's one of those things. And, I was kind of struggling to figure out, like, obviously we try to figure out what kind of a remake this is. And we kind of maybe try to find a category, put a name to it. And if I have to, right off the top of my head, think of something that, might work for this type of remake, I'm actually going to go on, I'm going to call it the Vanity remake. Because it's made because of who made it.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
who's in it? Or
Yeah, and sometimes both,
Yeah.
but definitely because of who made it. You kind of get to a point in your career when you're like, I want to make this movie. And maybe
I
the studio-
shouldn't.
right? And that's the thing. It's like maybe you shouldn't. There's definitely times when directors, and sometimes you kind of see it in like sometimes more classic stories. I know, you could even maybe have said that a little bit about Robert Eggers and Nosferatu, like we did last year on A Copy of a
Yeah.
Copy, or something maybe more recent like Guillermo del Toro's take on Frankenstein.
Sure.
You're taking these classic stories or something that is very well known, and you're like, I'm gonna make this,
Right.
and sometimes it's worthwhile, sometimes it's not, and but a lot of times it does revolve around who is making it.
Yeah, I haven't seen either of these movies, so I kind of in my brain was flirting with, was this a cash grab? You would know better than me, like if this was good enough to avoid being called just a cash grab, if they brought anything to the table.
Mhm.
But we will know soon enough.
Yeah, and so if for those of you who aren't familiar with Sabrina, just a quick little synopsis. So both the original 1954 and the new Sabrina, I can't. It has I've only seen the first one once. The remake once.
95, yeah.
Right, 95 one once, but I'm pretty sure for the most part, outside of like some more like modernized takes on certain elements. The story is essentially the same, but
They have microwaves now, stuff like that.
right, exactly. Sabrina Fairchild is the Audrey Hepburn character in the original, and she plays the daughter of the family's chauffeur, this rich family, Larrabee.
And that's Greg Kinnear's character in the '95 one, I think.
Right. Who?
Sabrina.
Oh, exactly. That's exactly. I thought Harrison Ford played Sabrina, actually. But anyway, she kind of falls in love with the playboy brother. So there's two brothers in the Larrabee family. In the original, it is William Holden and Humphrey Bogart.
Okay.
And William Holden plays kind of the playboy brother, and she kind of falls for him. And it's kind of a situation where it's like, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Whatever. And so the older brother, the other older, I think he is older, brother Humphrey Bogart, who's a more serious brother, in the business, decides to kind of intervene and kind of mess with the relationship a little bit. But it's a really good movie. I gotta say it. I love this movie so much, and it's I think it's a great Bogart performance, and I think you're going to be kind of taken by surprise by the performance itself.
I'm looking forward to watching that one. I am curious about watching the '95 one. Like, I'm very familiar with it, but I never went and saw it.
Well, and and it's difficult because I like Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing. It's like it's not like there's necessarily anything bad with the parts of this movie, and I think that's sometimes how these if what we might coin as a vanity remake is. It's like the parts aren't bad, because they can go and do this. They can get this person. They can get that person. But it's
so it's
right.
Some of the parts have to be. There has to be more of a reason. Like
exactly.
If you're just going to remake a classic, and even if you were just as good, still why?
Yeah.
Like, why would you remake it if you're not going to be way, way better, or think you have a chance of being way, way better? It just seemed like you probably weren't going to be better than the original Sabrina. It was probably just too highly regarded.
Well, and especially if you're going to go, remake Billy Wilder, because again, if you take a shot at the king, you best not miss. And since Billy Wilder is the king, we're going to see how that goes. But we are going to see how that goes because Ray's never seen either one of these movies, so he's going to have to just take the whole thing fresh, get a real fresh perspective, a fresh perspective on a copy of a copy.
I'm almost thinking I should watch the new one first, so I don't get spoiled by like how good the original was.
I mean, there could be some validity to
I'm
that,
not
but
gonna.
I would do it. But that's what we're going to go do right now. We are going to go watch both Sabrina 1954 and Sabrina 1955, and we invite you to do the same. Pause the podcast, go watch these classic movies, come back, and hear what Ray and I have to say.
Ray and Rob are currently watching the film. Wait, films? There are two? How long is this supposed to take? I've got places to be, Ray and Rob will be right back when they're done watching the films.
All right, everyone, we are back from watching Sabrina. Ray and I, I'm gonna jump right out here, real quick, right out front, and I'm gonna say this: something's may happen that has never happened before.
Wow.
And I think that is I have watched a movie that I'm going to kind of almost maybe completely reevaluate my original.
You hated the original movie Sabrina that much?
No, I now I hate you. No, I'm kidding. No, the remake, I remember not enjoying it that much the first time that I watched it. Again, I've only ever seen it once, and I have to say it wasn't too bad. It's better than I remember.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
No, it's not.
I totally went in thinking like the only memory I have of this movie was thinking it was a bust, like it was a flop. So I thought it was going to be bad and just be like a shot for shot bad remake. But no, it's not that bad.
No,
I still would question, and we'll talk more about this, but like why you would want to watch it over the original.
Sure,
but we can talk about why throughout this conversation.
Yeah.
But it's not that bad.
Yeah, no, I was pleasantly surprised how much I appreciated this movie compared to when I maybe watched it originally. But we need to break it down more than that.
Sure,
That's not the end of the podcast.
That'd be a short one.
It would be a very short one if I just said that. And that's not really what this is about anyway. It's not just is this good, is this bad?
No.
X,
We'll
Y,
see.
Z.
What did they do that was different? Why did they do it?
Exactly. So
Does it work?
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about that. I think we had talked about in the before section about what kind of a remake this is. I think we kind of settled on calling it like a legacy remake, like because Sydney Pollock wanted to remake Sabrina or whatever, like he's going to remake Sabrina. Well, why else would you remake such an iconic film at all?
Right.
And something kind of came to mind as we were kind of watching this, and it made me think of Aladdin. Surprisingly enough, where it was like, the original is such an iconic thing, why would you remake it and all that? Now, that was for a completely different reason because they were remaking all their animated stuff live action.
Cash grabby.
Right, exactly. And, the thing that just kept ramming up against, as I'm watching this is just this idea of like filling such iconic actors' shoes.
Yeah, that's the tough part.
And that's really the tough part. So I want to let's kind of take them a little bit, maybe character by character or whatever, and kind of talk a little bit about that, because I do think that while in the end, Audrey Hepburn and Humphrey Bogart have shoes that you just can't fill.
Right.
I do feel like Harrison Ford and Julia Ormond did swing for the fences.
They try their best, and I think that's my big thing with the movie. I think I watched these both for the first time, and immediately I was like, wow, Audrey Hepburn is very like enigmatic. How do you say that?
Enigmatic.
Yeah, in this movie, and I was like, wow, this is like she is Sabrina for sure. And then when I watched the remake, no offense to Julia Ormond, she does great, but I just kept thinking the whole time, you're just not Audrey Hepburn now. This role is Audrey Hepburn's role.
Yeah. I kind of was thinking in my mind, like, what would that meeting be like? Sydney Pollock's making this movie. He's casting the movie. He's like, okay, Julia Ormond's coming in to have a meeting about it or whatever, sitting down. How do you talk to her about that? Because I got to think that, she has those kind of reservations going in. Like, this is Audrey Hepburn.
Right.
This is a role that, is iconic because of her. Is this those kind of trepidations, I'm sure, were there. So it's just I'd be curious kind of what those discussions were like to kind of ease her mind, and just what they were going to try to do to differentiate her from that original performance.
But you know why they picked Julia Ormond? Because if you squint really hard, she looks like Audrey Hepburn.
No, I absolutely, I 100% get that. It's kind of like why you would cast Skeet Ulrich instead of Johnny Depp in the 90s, because if you squint a little bit, he kind of looked like Johnny Depp. So no offense, Skeet. I'm sure you've heard that a million times, but come on, you got to know that's why you got cast as much as you did in the 90s.
Yeah, but yeah, that took I think that's a thing. And I will say some good choices. I think the movie does a lot better job with the new Linus. The 95
that's fair,
than the old
there
Sabrina.
Is some stuff. Yeah, there's absolutely some stuff.
Because I'll tell you one thing, I don't think I really cared for, and I don't know why. This is probably totally nitpicky, but really trying to, for lack of a better phrase, ugly up Sabrina in the 95 one before she goes to Paris. Mm-hmm. I don't really feel like that worked for me because you know what I mean. I don't want this to feel like this movie isn't like a 10 Things I Hate About You thing or whatever, where you do it's a makeover movie. You know what I mean?
She's all that or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. This isn't a makeover movie. You know what I mean? She doesn't come back like a prettier person necessarily. Mm-hmm. She comes back more, from Paris a more mature, confident person.
Yeah.
And so it's I feel like when you focus too much on what she looked like, you're kind of losing, I don't know, some of what Sabrina's real development in Paris was. Mm-hmm. At least I thought that originally. They do go into more depth, and I definitely feel like you see Sabrina more.
Yeah.
They do. But in the original, literally all she does is cut her hair. She does.
Right.
Maybe she dressed a little tomboy
maybe
before and stuff, but
it's a little more mousy.
Yeah.
But then when she comes back, she's
she's an adult now. Yeah, she's an adult now. Yeah. But it was all right. She wore a new dress and she cut her hair. But it wasn't. It didn't feel like. I don't know. It just felt like there was the glass in the original or in the new one. There's the glasses and the really fuzzy long poofy hair and baggy clothes and just I don't know. Just felt a little too much for me.
I get that, but also on the flip of that, you could make the argument that it just makes it makes the impact more prevalent.
Yeah.
Just because like you said, I agree that it's not necessarily an an ugly duckling versus
Right.
swan situation as much as it is a maturity situation. But like you said, definitely in the original, mainly because it's literally impossible to like really
Make her look
ugg
too
up
bad.
Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah.
Like even when they tried to do that in My Fair Lady, when
Yeah.
she goes from the bag lady to the princess, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't
She's
care
still-
if she's
she's
got
still
dirt
fine.
all over her face. It's Audrey Hepburn. I'm in
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably more to the reason why they
I-
probably didn't
I-
go that route in
Yeah.
the original.
I think I like the
but-
idea too that all she did was cut her hair. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, it's almost like now you can see me, but I haven't changed that much for who I really am,
Right.
or was.
Yeah.
But, whereas, I think though when you get past that part, like they do a much better job of I think really showing her maturity
Mhm.
as a person, and like so you get what Linus is seeing.
Yeah.
Like he gets so much more exposure to the true like adult Sabrina in the new version
Yeah.
than I feel like Humphrey Bogart gets to the mature version of Sabrina.
Yeah, I would say in the original, while the maturity is there, I think she's more aloof
Yeah.
a little bit
Yeah.
when she comes back, which I think is kind of part of it as well, where she's not quite as aloof in the
Right.
new one. But I think overall for me, I think it plays well off of both versions of Linus, and I think
Right.
that's kind of where
Yeah.
where both movies really pass or fail is the chemistry between Sabrina and Linus.
Sure. It's funny to say, like, because I agree. I think the area that they filled in the most was Linus.
Right.
And it's funny when you're like, if you're planning on like, how do we remake Sabrina? It's like, well, let's fix Bogart's character.
Right.
Because it's like, don't you think like Bogart probably did it the way it should be done? Like, wouldn't you
Sure.
be afraid to touch that?
No, absolutely. Again, I mentioned the conversation
Yeah.
between Sydney Pollock and Julia Ormond. I can't imagine the situation between
Yeah.
Sydney Pollock and Harrison Ford. I mean, and Harrison Ford was an icon when
Sure.
he walked through the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like
A different type, though.
it's fair, but it's still he's an icon.
Yeah.
And as you can, I'm not saying he's the Humphrey Bogart of our generation
No,
by any
I know.
stretch, but I'm just like that kind of level. I mean, that's what Harrison Ford is. I
Sure.
mean, he's Han frickin' Solo. Like
Exactly.
it's knowing that it's funny to think of shoes being too big for Harrison Ford to fill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's such a strange idea in my mind.
But it still may be true.
I mean, possible. Well, yes, and I think and that's kind of the thing. I will say, again, we kind of talked about the chemistry between the two and like how these performances are played, and I do think that goes back to that conversation that I kind of alluded to, because it was like they had to figure out what are we going to do different.
Right.
And so in the original, you've got Humphrey Bogart, which basically he plays Humphrey Bogart through the whole movie. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, yeah, he's got his moments where he definitely kind of has those emotional depths. Where he's talking about the woman that he was in love with. You know, that kind of thing. Those things that he uses to manipulate.
Doesn't want to
Sabrina.
listen to a certain record.
Right. Humphrey Bogart has his way of doing that.
Yeah.
And Harrison Ford had his way of doing that kind of same thing, but it was different.
It was different because he had more to play off. Harrison Ford had more to play off of.
Right.
Like he had a Sabrina that was mature, that he could notice and see, and you could tell like, oh, he's noticing a change here, he's noticing a change there.
Well, and I think that's the thing, because like Humphrey Bogart's just so damn cool. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when he comes into that tennis court, after David sat on the glasses and all of that, and like he has to go
Yeah.
and like talk to Sabrina, he is so smooth in that moment, and they obviously try to play that moment similarly in the remake.
Yeah.
But even as cool as Harrison Ford is, he's not Humphrey Bogart.
No.
In that way, and
He's not.
that's the thing. So it's like I think that's why they had to play her a little more aloof.
Sure.
To play off of the cool of Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
Whereas because Harrison Ford, I would almost like say his Linus is a bit stiffer. That he play.
Yeah.
Even in the beginning, like or especially in the beginning when it's
Yeah.
like setting up his character as being this kind of like titan of industry and very like business focused and all of that. Like he almost comes off like a nerd. You know what I
Right,
mean? Where
right.
Humphrey Bogart never ever once even remotely in this movie comes off as like a nerd.
No.
Whereas like you could kind of like say that about
Yeah.
Harrison Ford in the remake. So I do think that the maturity element that they kind of add to the Julia Ormond character
Like
plays
subtract,
well off of
yeah.
that. Right. Like plays off of that kind of maturity, if you will, of like supposedly who Linus is.
Right.
But it's always kind of that classic weakness and need where it goes too far, and I think that's what they kind of were talking about with Linus in this, in the remake especially, where it's like that responsibility, that maturity just went too far, where it became toxic.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. Like I definitely feel like you could say, when you look at the original, like the way Humphrey plays it, where he's super cool the whole time, like
Right.
he is manipulating Sabrina, like he is trying to get her to fall in love with him,
Yep.
and just the whole time he's playing just to ship her off, right? And that's obviously that's the same storyline in the second one. In the second one, you can tell right away he's like having regrets about this plan because he's falling for her right away.
Yeah.
And so like that adds more moments where he can be vulnerable and stuff, and that's good.
Yeah.
But the counter to that, like I don't know if it's just the way Bogart does it or how they planned it out, but another one is like you see the same plan going forward, but you never really see. It's hard to tell if Bogart is ever really falling for Sabrina or if he's always manipulating her.
Sure.
And I kind of like that like double blindness to it too.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I kinda,
No, I understand that completely.
yeah, because I think then you just look for the moments more when I would rewatch it. Like when
Yeah.
he takes the record away from her,
Mhm.
he's very cool about it. But I'm like, oh, I wonder if there's just that little bit of an eye look there where he's like, yeah, I don't want to go there. I don't want to listen to this one, or you know
Yeah.
what I mean. If there's just a little bit more of those moments where it's like it's harder to find in Bogart's portrayal, but that's what makes it good.
Yeah. Well, and I think another element too, between, and it's a generational element where it's like what played to a 50s audience, what plays to a 90s audience. So I think by the, in the 50s, those Hollywood conventions were very much in place. Like that classic Hollywood convention was very much in place. Whereas by the 90s, we had gone through like, the new Hollywood of the 70s where it was like people wanted a little bit more of those nuances in the performances that would kind of, broaden the scope of who these characters are.
Yeah.
And I think so that's one thing that Sydney Pollock was kind of, trying to do to set this apart from the original was giving those kind of emotional swings, and kind of giving that depth of character more clearly through the movie, where like you said, you can kind of see him wavering on decisions, you can see him changing as a person before your eyes, where it doesn't necessarily, it's not like a twist ending per se,
Right.
but even though it did kind of be that way in the end, it ended up being that way in the end in both movies, obviously because of like how the ending plays out.
Yeah.
But having Linus kind of I guess kind of reach this new equilibrium through maybe I guess more of a well-planted seed, if you will.
Yeah, but then I do like in the original, like you're not really sure how Linus is playing it. Is he falling for? Is it not? And then kind of in the ending is like David challenges him. It's like, reveal your hand to me, sir. Like I'm going to make you prove that you love her. And so I think that's better when you don't know if he does. Like of course this is a movie, it's a love story. I'm sure he does, but you don't really know until that moment when he punches him. When he punches David, then you're like, all right, there it is, and that's what David says. Like I knew it.
Yeah,
that's it. There's the proof.
Yeah.
And I think that works more when you're not 100% sure.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. And they kind of go through some more modern situations, obviously, that maybe allow for some, different takes on things. Just like they go to the Indian restaurant or the Middle Eastern restaurant.
Sit on the floor.
Yeah. And things like that. And, kind of having those scenes play out a little differently than maybe what they had done in the original version. Again, it kind of lets them play off each other and kind of expose each other's weaknesses, through these conversations.
I like that it was also like, I do think obviously the original, it's updated for the times, but like, in the original, like when David is hurt, he's just like, hey, you want me to take you on some dates so you can, while he's recovering? It's like, that's, it's a little weird to be like, yeah, you want to go on a date with me since you're the person you actually in love with is hurt? It's like, yeah, that would fill my time.
Right.
Where in the remake, it's more like, let's find things for them to do together, but they're not technically, they're dates, like in Linus's plan, but they're not like official dates or something. Like Sabrina doesn't know she's on a date necessary with Harrison Ford's Linus. So I think that's a good little update as well.
But it's funny because it makes me think of Pulp Fiction. Like when Vincent Vega takes out Mia Wallace on a date, it's like it's
Mhm.
just good company. It's like when your
Right,
your
right.
buddy's out of town, you take your wife out for good company. Like, is that a thing?
Yeah.
Like
It was, I guess.
I guess it is, but yeah, no. But he keeps saying it's all in the family, and
Yeah.
I'm like, there are porno movies that start out like this, man. Like,
Yes, sir. Yes,
so
sir.
that was just that. I that line always like even in the original kind of like
It's weird.
it's a little weird. Like
Yeah.
even though as much as I love Sabrina, I can freely admit like that line hits a little weird. It's
Yeah,
like
their first kiss I think
what?
is weird in both, and I like in the original that she slaps him, or in the remake,
Yeah,
that she slaps him for it because it's
Sure.
really out of left field and out of nowhere
right,
and kind of inappropriate for the moment.
sure.
But so it's good that he gets slapped for it.
Well, yeah, and you kind of like I said, I think they do a lot of the same beats, obviously, through
Sure.
both movies, and they find those little ways to make it their own. And I think you're right. It's a great change for that scene because it does feel again, it's that convention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like kisses like that happen in old Hollywood movies, and like by modern standards, it feels weird.
Yeah.
You know, to just like randomly kiss somebody out of nowhere.
Right.
Whereas you know, in the '90s, it's like, whoa, man.
You got to
Sexual assault.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like
have a whole department of the HR that is devoted to stopping this.
right, exactly. So it's they have to figure out a way to update that. And I think it works.
Not to finish out those characters because there's so much more to talk about.
Oh,
but
yeah.
but think about David real quick too, just to round out like pretty much the trio of main stars of the movie.
Sure.
I will say in the original, I find Greg Kinnear, and I think this is to a detriment, not creepy enough. Like not enough of a scumbag.
You mean in the remake? You find
The-
Greg
Greg Kinnear.
Greg Kinnear in the remake is
not
not creepy enough as
creepy
William Holden.
enough.
Yeah,
Yes.
I
He's
can
not-
agree with that.
He's not like as bad of a playboy as he is in the original, or at least he doesn't come across that way to me.
I agree. In fact, I really don't like how the wedding comes across in the new one because in the remake, just simply because it's like so he meets Lauren Holly, and it's they seem to be having a good relationship or
Yeah.
whatever. Like he's kind of the one driving it. He's at the hospital. And then it's just like this proposal comes out of nowhere, and like, sure, she's the one who says, "Well, why don't you marry me?" Or
Right.
whatever, and he's like, "Well, why don't I?" And it's so you can make the argument that it wasn't his idea, but for him to like have that and then it go to I'm mad because there's a merger involved, like it's like. Yeah, he can feel like he was manipulated, but he also genuinely likes her. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and
he
I get
wasn't
it.
manipulated into the marriage.
Right, exactly. 100%, exactly. Whereas, like, in the original, he was.
Right.
Like, he was 100% Linus planted this story. It was all fake. Like, it wasn't even, Elizabeth Tyson. I'm sure they, I like Elizabeth, whatever, but,
Yeah.
like, it wasn't this. And now it's like, no, you're getting married because we say you are. It was very much like an arranged marriage situation.
And I will say the callback to the forcing the news in the paper in the original is great. When
Absolutely.
When David forces Linus to go after Sabrina by leaking stuff in the paper as retribution is great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like I said, I think that they were able to capture those little moments through those scenes that you remember so clearly from the original in the remake. But again, like you said, kind of making them their own.
Yeah, but David doesn't do enough sleazy stuff though too. Because I'm almost like I almost get why Sabrina likes him.
But is it because it's Greg Kinnear? Like, is it because you like,
I can't
look at
tell
Greg
if it's
Kinnear and you're like, I like Greg Kinnear. He's a nice guy, or whatever. Is it like, you see William Holden as just being like a slime ball?
Yeah, he talks faster. It's just not good. But I will say, the one big change I think that kind of hurts me, not forces me to not dislike David enough early on, is when they have the party scene where Sabrina comes back and he's so flirty with her. His wife's not there.
Right.
And that's a big difference.
No, 100%. Because, man, it takes some cojones to be at a party with your fiance. You spill something on her extremely expensive dress.
Yeah.
So that she has to go and wash up so that you can go and try to, like, flirt and hook up with your hopeful side piece.
Right.
Like that takes some cojones. So I agree completely that moment
that's the biggest
solidifies David. Right.
Yeah.
But the funniest thing about it, and this could, again, I definitely is for me a check in the original, is because of that and because he was forced into it, you can almost like, even though he's a playboy, even though he's very, promiscuous or whatever, you can buy into like why he's like, well, I don't really care about Elizabeth.
Sure.
I want Sabrina because he didn't really want Elizabeth anyway.
Yeah.
So because of like that, I do feel like it's harder to buy into why David would be so into Sabrina in the remake as opposed to the original.
I agree. And I will say too, at that party scene, the dress that Audrey Hepburn wears, and I'm not a fashion person, but she just pulls it off.
There's nothing that woman couldn't wear.
No,
I
yeah.
mean-
So I will say, I think one of the best scenes, and they do it in both movies, and it's not exactly the same, but it's pretty close, is when Sabrina first comes back from Paris and she gets picked up
Yeah.
by David, and
At
he
the
does
bus.
not recognize her.
Yep.
I just think that whole scene back where he's trying to figure out who she is, and she's giving kind of hints, but not really. Like,
Yeah.
it's like really a great scene.
Yeah.
In both movies, I really haven't seen a scene quite like that in kind of one of these love story movies, and it's just so good.
Yeah, I think both of them are really great in the car. I think the original is way better when they get to the house.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's good.
Or you think the original's way better?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. And I'll tell you why. Just because, so you pull into a drive. In the original, it's like, what street do you live on? Tell your street. Oh, I live on that street
Oh,
too.
we're
We must be
neighbors. Weird.
neighbors.
How?
Whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like,
David knows
and
every
like-
pretty girl. There's no way that you can be
Right.
neighbors and him not know who you are.
right. And it's like, so she obviously is like, guiding him, and take this, whatever, go down this road, go to this driveway, and he ends up in his own house. Like, wait a minute, I live here. Like, as soon as he pulls in, stops the car, and looks around, and is like, wait a minute, I live here. And he's like, hello, neighbor.
Right.
Like, it's such a great moment because you're like, well, yeah, he realizes he's at his house. In the new one, they pull into his driveway.
Right.
They get out of the car, and and at that moment, he still doesn't know who she is. You
Right,
know what I mean?
right.
And it's like, she lives somewhere around here. Like, why are you in your driveway? And you not at this point realize, like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Right.
And they kind of get through the whole, like, I do like the idea of him inviting her to the party without knowing who she is. And I will say, okay,
I'll say the Linus part
the Linus
is better.
part is better. I do
Yeah.
get that because, like, having Linus be the one to recognize her is great because it goes to show that Linus has always seen her and
Right.
will always
Recognize
see
her right away.
Right. So I do think that in and of it,
That part's
part
better.
is better.
Yeah. The David
I'll
stuff
give
is
you
weak.
that.
The David stuff is
David stuff
weaker,
is
but the
weaker.
Linus stuff is better.
Agree. Because, like, when obviously when all of like the staff comes out because they all know her and everything like that,
Yeah.
like that's always nice, that sweet moment. But yeah, having Linus be the one to recognize her in the remake was a good call just because it added that extra layer to their relationship.
Yeah. So that's the only part I was leaning to, but just great scenes.
Yeah.
Great scenes in both. I'll tell you another favorite, really a scene I like that both movies do, and again I probably lean toward the original. Is like, once Sabrina and Linus start going on some dates. There's that, maybe it's a second date or whatever, but when Sabrina, I'm talking about the original now,
Mhm.
when she comes back and like David's there and he's
Mhm.
like, he's like, hey, how was it like hanging out with number 2 or whatever. So he's coming off like he's just that cocky, funny
Right.
guy, suave and whatever, and it's just like it's not hitting for her anymore. Like it's
Yeah.
like she's kind of got these feelings for Linus coming up, and she's like, you're almost like you can, and there's no words really that Sabrina's really saying. You can just almost tell like she's just not digging it. Like the macking isn't working on her.
Yeah.
It's almost like annoying. Like he's the little kid now,
Absolutely.
and she's like, can you kiss me? And then the kid's
Yeah.
like, could you do it again?
Right.
And you can just tell like it's
She's
not
trying to
she's
convince
yeah.
herself.
She's trying to rekindle the flame. She's like, I like this guy. Like this should be awesome right now, and it's not. And she's not saying these words, right?
Right.
There's no exposition
Nope.
here. It's just she's just not into it.
Yeah, and on that same vein, I appreciate later in the movie where we actually get the scene post where she takes the ticket and she's going to go, and she finds him in the billiard room,
Yeah.
because they allude to that scene in the original. So, like, William Holden shows up at the office to talk to Linus, is like, oh, I saw Sabrina last night, and and he talks about the scene instead of us seeing the
Right.
scene.
Right.
So I appreciated in the remake how we got to see the scene that we didn't get to see in the original,
Right.
of him kind of realizing she's not into me anymore.
Yeah.
And-
she's into Linus.
Right.
And he's okay with it.
Right, and exactly, and so I think that was a nice touch,
Yeah.
for a remake, to like look at the original and be like, okay, well, this is a scene that they didn't do, they alluded to and they didn't do it. I'm going to do it. So I think that was smart for Sydney Pollock to go down that road.
All right. I do want to circle back to some things. There's just a couple things I just really want to make sure we hit, and one of them it's like an Audrey Hepburn scene, because it's great to me. This is great. Like it's that one early in the movie. I think it might have been after their very first date in the original.
Mhm.
They don't really have a scene like this. I think in the remake where she goes back after the first date and she sees her father washing the car,
Oh
and then
yeah, yeah.
she
Mhm.
goes to help wash
After
the
the
car
boat, they go on the
too.
boat where he's got
Yeah,
the
yeah.
record
So I
player
guess that
or
was maybe
whatever.
their
Yeah,
second date. Yeah. And then she like they listened to the song about the monkeys
yeah.
or something. What was it?
The
It was like,
banana, like, don't,
yeah, there's like, yeah, no bananas
no bananas
today or
today. Yeah.
whatever. And you can just see in Audrey Hepburn's performance, like there's this like giddiness
Mhm.
on her face, like she's so happy.
Yeah.
And you hadn't really, I just like, I don't know, it's just like her look, like her facial expression, this like just looks so pure and like just so full of joy. I'm like, such a just like it just makes for such a great scene. It's such a little scene. Then she just starts singing that dumb song again. It's just like, I don't know. It just kind of shows you like what love at first is. And I almost thought of it like, man, I guess in some ways it's kiddish, and I feel like that there is that balance that we're talking about between like how mature is she when she comes back. Like she
Sure.
she she definitely can handle herself more,
Right.
but she is still like that. There's that aloofness, kiddiness, but I don't know. I like it. It just plays.
Yeah. No, I agree completely, and I think again you're right with the maturity element. Especially compared to Julia Ormond, where I do feel like in the original, it's not. There's a maturity there clearly, but it is more of like a worldly aloofness as
Yeah.
well. And I think you're right. Like in that moment, you can kind of see her swaying towards Linus, a bit as well, and it's yeah. I think again, part of it is because it's Humphrey Bogart.
Sure.
It works. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're like, yeah, I get that. And but it's funny, leading up to that because when he like is planning the boat scene, and they play on this in the remake as well. Like he pulls out his like Letterman sweater or whatever,
Right.
and like his weird little like beanie cap or whatever,
Right.
and puts it on. He looks like a total doofus.
It's not gonna work.
It's not right, like it's not gonna work. And then like in the remake, he puts on the ball cap,
Yeah.
and she like gives him like a really like weird look. But yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. But like I said, I do think maturity is the big theme post Paris Sabrina,
Yeah.
really for all three leads.
Sure.
Because again, I think maybe the weakness and need across all three characters really, it stems on the on the maturity spectrum, if you will.
Yeah.
Because so I think the big difference between Julia Ormond and Audrey Hepburn is when she comes back after Paris in the remake, and at first she is like trying to fulfill this fantasy she has with David,
Yeah.
and then when she realizes that it's not what she wants, it's because of the maturity element of
Sure.
it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like it's like she's grown past him. Like David was a childhood girly crush. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And Linus is like the man that the mature Sabrina wants. Now, that's not like trying to necessarily play this where like, well, the captain of industry is the mature one,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like because there's still that, like I said earlier, like kind of that toxic element. So I think that's the other part of Linus's character is maturity to realize that he's gone too far.
Right.
And
Right.
I think so. Like that's maturity is such an interesting term because it doesn't necessarily mean stability.
Yeah. It can almost be backwards. Could be good. I don't for Linus.
Right, exactly. It's more just being situationally aware,
Yeah.
if you will,
What-
of what you need, what others need, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, like Linus has obviously there's a selfishness to everything he's doing. Right?
100%.
Yeah, this is all about a business deal, and it's Sabrina is going to be the sacrifice, and they have a great like scene where, and they do it in both movies, and to me it's perfect. Where like it's when Sabrina and Linus first talk when he's trying to get her on the tennis ball court or in the solarium
Mhm.
when he's like coming in with a bottle of champagne and immediately Sabrina kind of knows like, oh, you're here to it's
Take
kind of
care
like
of me,
like in
yeah.
a theater, like in a movie or a show where you're here to buy me off, and then she kind of explaining what would happen in the movie, and then Linus just jumps in and says, I'll give you $1 million.
Like $1 million.
And you're like, are you playing around or are you
Right.
doing it right now? And it's like this. There's this that you're not quite sure what Linus is doing right now. Is he is he being serious? He's like, is this going to work? If it doesn't work, then he can play it off, which he does.
Yeah.
But they do that really well. Well, let me say this too. So we've said this a couple times. Like Sabrina, we do see a little bit more of her life in Paris.
Yes.
And I think that is good. But I also do like the idea that we don't like. I don't know. Like there's a lot of that 2 years of Sabrina's life in the original that we don't see,
Mhm.
and I like kind of filling in some of those gaps myself. Like like for me, it's like okay, like sexually mature. Like I'm like she had to have run into some encounters in Paris in those 2 years. So when she comes back, she has that confidence with David. Like I don't think
Sure.
she's just some innocent flower anymore. She's just a more mature adult.
Right.
Where in there and then the remake they kind of show like there is some of these exposures to men and stuff, and
Right.
it's just more
Seems
like
like one guy really, which is so
Well,
weird.
yeah.
It's like so she's in Paris and she's like
well, they're more
kind of
vague.
got like a main squeeze.
Yeah,
if you
they're
will.
more vague on how long she was out there.
That's
where like
fair.
it's very clearly 2 years.
Yeah.
Because it's like David is engaged while she's out there. Like so they don't really ever say how long David's engaged. They make it seem like
Right.
it's been a minute, but
Yeah.
you don't really know how long she's been out there. So like maybe there was a year and a half we don't see it, whatever. But
That's
yeah,
true.
so it's like I don't know. I kind of like leaving some of the leaving some of it up to imagination and like how mature is Sabrina? What did she do to get this mature? Like it's kind of up to you.
Yeah, I can agree with that, and I do think, the whole situation was obviously modernized for the 90s, where
Yeah.
we're talking about, okay, in the 1950s, why is she going to Paris? Oh, she's going to a culinary class, like
Right.
women do,
Right,
that kind
right.
of thing. Whereas, like, in the 90s, it's like she's going to be an intern for Vogue magazine, which is
Right.
like a big deal,
Sure.
So I think that those kind of situations work for each respective film, again, because of the convention of the time. But you're right. Like they kind of go more definitely into, and it feels like they spend more screen time on Paris for Sabrina in the remake than
I
they
think
do in the
so.
original.
I think so.
I'm not 100% if that's true. I didn't clock it by any means, but like it does feel that way.
Yeah.
And in either way, I agree. Like it's kind of a show rather than tell situation in that regard, just because you see her with, I think his name was Louis, like that guy,
yeah,
or whatever.
in the remake,
right?
yeah.
And you kind of, it almost feels like that, like a training montage, if you
It
will.
is. It is. Yeah.
But
how to
but
grow
there's
up.
right, but there's some great visual representations in that too, like the David board. Like when she gets there, she's got this cork board, and the only thing is in it is a picture of David.
Yeah.
But then while she's there, like she's pinning stuff all around it, and it's like covering him up. It's a great visual representation of what's happening.
Yeah.
So I think
Sure.
those things work. But I agree with you as well, like, and especially for the sake of, I guess just,
Time.
narrative real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of getting through that quickly can also be helpful as
Yeah.
well.
I would say, the cooking school stuff was fine. It's just kind of like, it does a little bit of legwork, not a ton. But when she does first meet the Baron or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I do like when he's like, the scene where she doesn't get the souffle to like rise because she didn't turn the oven on. He's like,
Mhm.
woman in love burns souffle. Woman,
Oh.
a woman in like,
or it's like a woman who's happy
happily
in love burns
bur-
a souffle. A woman unhappy in love forgets to turn on the
Yeah.
oven. It's a great line. I
yeah.
wrote it down too.
Yep,
I
great,
love it.
great line.
Yeah.
But and in the original, there's a little bit more comedy too, like when she's writing back. Like I love when like the dad's reading the letters and she's like, "I'm kind of getting over David," and
That's
that's good.
good.
Like, I only think of it at night.
That's bad.
And then they
Yeah.
just got to do that ping pong.
Yeah.
But speaking of convention of the times, one big change that we haven't touched on yet is again early in the movie, but it's when Sabrina is going to go to Paris, she can't. She just saw David like mac over this girl and probably go score again or whatever, and she tries to kill herself basically.
Right.
She'd rather have killed herself at that moment than have gone to Paris, I guess. And then they do not even touch that in the remake. They basically just do a scene where she goes to confess her love to him. She does to David. She does, but Linus is there. Like she thinks she's talking to David, but she's talking to Linus.
Yeah.
So huge change there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think it's more of convention of the time. Like I think the melodrama of a suicide wouldn't have played well in the 90s,
Yeah.
whereas like in the 50s it's like, oh, what a lark.
Silly girl.
She tried to kill herself.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like it was such a romantic quote unquote romantic
Right.
idea to kill yourself over love in the 50s, that it was like, oh,
Right.
people will laugh at this. Whereas like in the 90s, it's like, we don't joke about suicide.
Yeah.
There's
People
a
do
hotline.
that.
If
That's not
anybody
good.
or
Yeah.
anybody, like, here's the number. Like,
You shouldn't kill yourself
suicide
over a boy
prevention
for any
hotline.
reason. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I get why they changed it
Yeah,
for
convention of
modern
the time.
convention, but yeah,
Killing yourself isn't the meet cute it used to be.
right, exactly. And it's funny because, but I do think both get the point across, where like Linus sees this young girl who is like immature in the moment, and maybe understands why, obviously in the new one or in the remake he does, because she flat out says it. But even in the suicide attempt, I feel like he somewhat understands.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. 100%. But yeah, big change, but probably needed. And that's probably one a tick in the remakes box where they are able to remake a scene and do it quicker.
Yeah.
And spending more real estate there. So we talked about everybody's maturity, and David probably has the biggest amount of maturity. Or I don't know about biggest, but at least it's the last one.
Yeah.
Where he's going to take over the family business, and he's
Right.
he's gonna do that for Linus. And I don't think this line is in the original, but in the remake, when you're kind of like, well, why is David allowed to be so aloof? Or like, why did he just not give a crap about the family business? And I think it's her father that says, like, I heard him in the car. I asked him in the car one time, like, why he doesn't go to work anymore. And he said, because Linus is there.
Yeah, like, why do they need me if they've got Linus?
Yeah, why do they need me if they got Linus?
Yeah.
And they don't really touch on that. They don't give you that in the original.
Right.
And I think that helps round Linus out so much. It's not that he's not capable. It's just like Linus does so much, or when he's around Linus, he just maybe feels less.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's more. It's more reading in between the lines in the original, because like the way that
it gets
Linus
there,
kind of right, and the way Linus kind of treats David like a child, and all those things, and he knows everything about, like, all of his ticks and everything that's wrong, but everything he does, like, and he's like, he was taking music lessons all the time. Oh, that would have been the oboe, or wait, was that? No, that was in the remake.
That was on the
beach scene. That's right, when there's like, it was, but either way, it's the same.
It's a character.
It's like, it's the character. It's like he knows all of these faults, and keeps track of them, almost like he's like, like some kind of like ledger of David's failings. But I do agree that in the remake they do a good job of tackling that, like, sibling rivalry and the pressure, but they also do it the opposite way, like on Linus, which is not necessarily something that they do as much in the 1954 version, because there's literally nothing Humphrey Bogart can't do. So why would you even like intimate it? But but for Harrison Ford, it's like, this pressure that's on him. It's like, there is this kind of pressure to achieve for the family.
Yeah.
Like, I think about it when he is telling the mom what his plan is for Sabrina, like taking her to Paris, ditching her in Paris, and she's like, I didn't, she's very appalled at this. Like, I don't want to, I didn't teach you to do this or whatever. And you can tell in that moment that, or like he even says, like, you have never looked into the face of, somebody who, company we've just destroyed, the day after, or something like that. And in that moment, you can see kind of the scarring on Linus that maybe you hadn't up to this point, about what he's done in the name of his family, whether it's because he wants to, or whether because it's been expected of him to do it.
Right.
And I think that's a very powerful moment for him in the remake.
Yeah, it justifies why he's going to be willing to walk away from all this money,
right?
And this lifestyle. Obviously, he's still going to be rich, but
right.
But yeah. So, and that, just kind of, speaking of the ending, the endings are pretty similar for the most part.
Yeah.
But I do think I like how the original plays out. I think it's a little funner.
Yeah, a little more slapsticky.
You're getting really close to the end there, like where he's gonna kill the deal and all this stuff, and then David saves the day at the last minute.
Right.
But I think for me, like the boat versus the airplane, the boat works better because, like, Linus is literally watching her sail away.
Right.
Like, we know exactly where Sabrina is. We're like, In the remake, she's on a plane. Obviously, that just makes a lot more sense. And you're not sure if the plane's already taken off, if he's going to get there or not. But you can literally see she's in the background because her boat's in the background.
Right.
She's on that boat.
Yeah.
So I just like that visual more. And then he gets on the tugboat and he meets her on the boat.
Yeah, and you get the hat gag where she
Yeah,
flips
the hat
down
gag,
the where it's like he brings the steward brings out the hat, has her flip it down, and then then he comes back out in the hat. I think it's great. Again, it's classic Bogey, classic Hepburn. Like it's just this great
It's a 50s
moment.
way to end it too.
Right, 100%. But I do like in the remake how like everybody's kind of forcing him to go, like when he's like hesitant about going, and it's like I think it's time you ran away from home. I can't remember if his mom said that. Mom says that. I think it's time you ran away from home. Like I think that's like such a great line. It's a great moment, and they kind of get when you get the Lauren Holly character, the Elizabeth Tyson character, kind of in on it as well. Like that's another level where you can tell that like David's he's gonna marry her. They're gonna have a great life together. Like they're on the same page now. Like whatever was
I don't know if Lauren Holly should be as cool with everything, but
fair
she's fine
enough.
with it.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. Now, granted, he didn't do anything. Like by the end of it, it's not like he did anything.
No, but he wanted to. But he wanted to. It kind of seemed like he confessed all his emotions.
He's not married yet, man. No. It's like the bachelor party. No,
exactly. You're right. Right. You're absolutely right.
But yeah, and she was like, "Go, Linus. Don't think." Like she tells him, and it's like again, it feels like a little bit of a bigger moment for Linus maybe than it does in the original, just because like everybody's kind of behind him to go do it, and so I agree with you. I still enjoy the original probably more again, just because of those. I like William Holden's response when he gets punched on the table. It's great framing. He slides back and he's like sitting up. It's like, "See, I told you." Like it's just like that. And it's
they
like,
kind of have this relationship where they're allowed to punch each other when they want to, which is kind of cool.
It knocks some sense into him, But I think there's things that they both do well though.
They are. So yeah, I mean, we talk about why do they make remakes, right? And that's kind of why we do this podcast. We wanted to see, and I totally went into this one thinking, I know why they made this remake. It was a cash grab. They were just trying to cash in on a classic, win a box office. You're never gonna watch this one again, but they're gonna make their money at the box office, and that's why they made this one. And I'm wrong. I feel like I'm wrong in that. Like they did not make a bad movie here. They made a good movie. It isn't going to be. It's not going to replace the classic. Like if I had these both on DVD somehow, I'm only picking the original. That's the only one I'm rotating. But I could see if you were a real lifelong fan of Sabrina, the original, and you just wanted to I just want to see a new one, another take on it. You know what I mean? Like this did it justice. I feel like. It's not better, but it does it justice.
No, I can agree with that. Like, I think we called this a legacy remake. I still think that stands. I think
that's a fair reason why it got made. Yeah.
Right, yeah. I think this got made because Sydney Pollock maybe wanted to make it or whatever. You had the clout to do it, and then you have the star power behind it. You have your Harrison Fords and your Julia Ormonds, your Greg Kinnears, and all of that. And it was able to come together because of that. But but you're right. When you walk in, it's just like when we were talking about Casablanca and Barbed Wire.
Right.
It's why they went and they made Barbed Wire the way they did, because it's like, well, damn, like you're not going to remake the greatest movie of all time and just kind of keep it as is and expect it to be well received, because that's not. So with this, they took the big swing and said, we're going to do that. We're going to remake this great romantic comedy, this iconic romantic comedy, and we're going to keep it relatively the same. But they did find ways to kind of update it for a modern audience that I do think in its time was helpful. Like I said, I think the stuff that they expanded with the Linus character and some of those nuances that they did with David and Sabrina, I think they were worthwhile. So I think you can walk into this movie and you're right. It's never ever going to replace Humphrey Bogart and Audrey Hepburn. It's never ever going to happen. But is this a waste of time? No. And I think that's a pretty important distinction.
All right, Rob. Well, I think we can wrap up this conversation on Sabrina. Really good watches. Surprisingly for me, that the second one, the remake, was as fun to watch as it was.
Definitely.
And I would say, though, we are done with our conversation, but the audience is not. And if this was the 50s, I would go stand in a garage, turn the car on, and beg people to like, subscribe, and review.
That is
and if they don't,
that is melodramatic.
I'm going to stay in that garage. But this isn't the 50s, so I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to do a much more just talk right to you. Please like the podcast if you haven't done so already. Please subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. And leave us a 5-star review, because if you do, we're going to read it live on air someday. And that would be cool for you. You can email us at carrayrob@gmail.com if you want to talk to us, or you can reach out to us on Blue Sky at Car RayRob.
Absolutely. You can now also find us on Facebook and
Ooh.
Instagram at Car
We're on
RayRob
the gram.
Podcast. We are. We're
The
on the gram. We
gram.
are rocking the gram. So
Love that.
we're doing a lot of great stuff on Instagram. So by all means, find us on there. Follow us. We might even follow you back, just because
Why
that's
not?
what nice
We
people
got
do.
follows to give.
Exactly. If there's a comment section on whatever platform you're on, by all means, let us know what you thought of the original or the remake of Sabrina. Do you even like the remake more? Sometimes that happens with people. We would love to hear
It's
about
not
it.
bad.
But
It's not bad.
You know what? What's your favorite Audrey Hepburn movie? I think we maybe did our favorite Humphrey Bogart movie when we did In a Lonely Place. I want to know what your favorite Audrey Hepburn movie is. It would be really hard to choose. This one may be mine.
I
but
think
it's
Casablanca still might be my favorite.
Humphrey Bogart
I think
movie.
so. It was so freaking
Yeah,
good.
Audrey Hepburn wasn't in that.
No, I know.
So Audrey Hepburn movie, favorite Audrey Hepburn movie. We will be back next week, and it will be back to Ray on Say Hello to My Little Film.
Ooh, I gotta get prepared. Shoot.
Yeah. Did you pick a love story?
Kind of.
Kind of?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'll take that because you're not.
Actually, I'll
always
say yes. I'll say yes.
You'll say perfect because you're not always on theme with that.
No, not on brand.
But then we will be back in 2 weeks with our February episode of Hello Movies, My Old Friend, where Ray and I are going to be watching the Michael J. Fox romantic comedy Doc Hollywood.
He's gonna drive right into a sign.
I do remember that. He does do that.
Remember.
And then we will be back, of course, next month with both of our episodes to Say Hello to My Little Film. But you are not going to want to miss any one of those. But until then, this is Car RayRob.
Where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
A copy of a copy. 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 A copy of a copy.